Dina Sayeghdal. Dina, one of the things I want to talk about is the fact that they're really saying it was Chauvin. It was Chauvin's responsibility. Derek Chauvin should have done that. Is that an effective defense?
Not completely, because this trial is more about what they didn't do rather than what they did do. If it was a criminal case, which they are still facing, then I think that argument of, Chauvin was on his knee was on the neck, is going to maybe carry more weight. But in terms of what they could have done but didn't, which was call for an ambulance earlier, turn him on his side earlier, give him CPR. There's all sorts of things that each of them could have done, regardless of the actions that Chauvin was taking. And their best argument seems to be, it was what that expert is saying, was that they didn't do it because of this chain of command. There was nothing else really stopping them, though. And whether or not that's going to be enough to the jury is ultimately what's going to decide this case.
Talk a little bit about your thoughts, your opinion about the fact we know that these defendants are co-defendants of Derek Chauvin in the state criminal case. So we know they're going to face those criminal charges. This is a different civil rights allegation violation in terms of the federal charges against them. Are you surprised that I think we're starting to see, it's like the McMichaels, that we're seeing the state case on the criminal charges as well as federal cases on violations of rights? Do you think this is going to be more of a norm that we see both trials for the same set of defendants?
It's interesting because I think what we used to see was the federal cases come if at the state level, maybe justice wasn't served in the way that the community maybe felt. And it was a chance to take another look at that same event and get justice for it. But here we're seeing this, regardless of the conviction at the state. I mean, it is for two different things. As you said, the state cases are for what their actions are, how they are criminal under the penal code. This here is that they were government actors under his, and he died while under their custody. So as you said, deprived of constitutional rights. So they're completely different things, but I think we normally didn't maybe see the overlap on, once you already had a conviction of the criminal. We may, though, going forward, because these cases involving certainly police officers are gaining a renewed interest, in this country and how they are being handled.
Right, the renewed interest, completely agree. And unfortunately, we continue to see too many of these kinds of cases in the news. So talk to us briefly about, let's talk about trial skills and admissible evidence, because one of the other questions that I have people ask me is, all right, so if they're convicted, for instance, in this federal trial in the death and violation of civil rights of George Floyd, can that be used against them in the criminal trial trying them for the murder of George Floyd?
I mean, certainly not. It would definitely be very prejudicial to say, to introduce as evidence that they had been convicted under these same events. And, if something like that were to be admitted, it would easily be able to, be overturned, because if a jury were able to hear that, obviously that would prejudice them against it. So no, and essentially, because it is not the same crime, even though the events are the same, it's not the same crime. And so that's how they're able to keep that out as well. And to some extent, it's not relevant because they were prosecuted under a different a level of law that they violated.
Right, absolutely agree. The relevance issue, as well as, again, as a judge, I'd have to decide, is it more prejudicial than it is probative, which is always a question a court has to decide with a lot of the admissibility issues around evidence. All right, coming up.